Welcome to Education Perspectives. I am your host, Liza Holland. This is a podcast that explores the role of education in our society from a variety of lenses. Education needs to evolve to meet the needs of today and the future. Solving such huge issues requires understanding. Join me as we begin to explore the many perspectives of education. Jose Moreno graduated from Harvey Mudd College and began his tech career at Microsoft, working on services for over 500 million users. At Netflix, he contributed to features like Skip Credits, the account sharing initiative, adding over 40 million new subscribers. As founder and CEO of Neulight, Jose now focuses on transforming education through technology. His company's product, IntelliTier, leverages AI to empower educators to provide personalized student support, aiming to make a positive impact in education. Well, Jose Moreno, welcome to Education Perspectives.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Well, we're really excited to have you and want to kick you off with the question I ask every guest. From a 30,000-foot view, why do you think that we as a society need to invest in education?
Kids are our future. I mean, first and foremost, right? The thing that excites me the most about humans in general is the amount of innovation that we're capable of. The amount of innovation that we've seen over the last 50 years has been tremendous with the introduction of computers. And I just get more and more excited about what the future is going to be. And in order to continue to push things forward for the human race, we have to have an educated base, people that understand the fundamentals and that have the creative ideas to continue to push things along. And I don't know what's possible in the future, but I'm excited to see it.
That is great. I agree with you entirely. So you have a tremendous background in computer design and that sort of a thing and machine learning. And so you have now decided to kind of apply that to education. What drew you to that space?
To be honest with you, a little bit of it was strategic. So anytime I've talked to educators historically, they've complained a lot about the type of software that they have to deal with day to day. So for a long time, I knew that there was some kind of opportunity there. When I started thinking about creating my own company, I started wondering what sector to go into. And education just kept drawing me in more and more. And so what I ended up doing was I reached out to my cousin, who's a vice principal for a school with kids with special needs. And I just asked her, like, hey, what's your biggest problem day to day? Like, what's going on? What can we do to help you to make your life a little bit better? And then she started telling me about this new intervention system, multi-tier system of support, or PBIS, and how that's a data-driven system to help provide additional benefits for students. So when it's done with fidelity, we see an increase in attendance, grades, graduation rates, which is all great. But what she told me was that a lot of people were struggling in actually figuring out how to implement it, how to come up with intervention strategies. And so when she said that, not only did I love like the potential benefits of it, I also immediately started seeing a solution in my mind of how AI can help provide personalized student support if you have a complete product that is able to make data collection simple, centralizing data collection. And I know we're jumping into things a little bit more, but all of this just really excited me when I was speaking with her about it. And so after that conversation, we just decided to dive straight in, talk to more people in the education space. And we just kept getting this feedback more and more. And so it just got us more excited. And so we're fully invested at this point.
Well, it's actually a perfect segue into, you have some pretty amazing solutions to be able to offer. Can you talk a little bit about your system and why it's a good option in this sea of everybody trying to dive into AI?
Yeah. So my last 9.5 years were spent at Netflix. And I love so many things about that company and that product. And one of the biggest things that I saw while I was there was that a number of people just love Netflix. And it would always kind of like caught my curiosity. Like, why do people love Netflix so much more than, let's say, Amazon Prime Video? Or I don't really want to talk about competitors, but I mean, there is like a bit of a difference there. And it turns out that a big part of it is that it's just so simple to use. It's always there for you when you want it. and it's fast, right? And it makes your life a little bit easier when you want to wind down. At the end of the day, you just kind of turn it on, press play, and it immediately starts playing. You don't have to really think about things too much. And so we're bringing in a lot of that philosophy into EdTech. We want to build products that make your lives easier. So we can help you with brainstorming how to personalize student support. But we also want to do it in a way where it's a joy to use or something that you don't really think about very much, right? Data collection, now that I'm like really diving into the sector, I'm seeing more and more memes from teachers that are like, oh, data collection, data collection, data collection. And then nothing ends up happening with it, right? So for me and for my tech background, what I know and what I've seen is like, yeah, you can collect a lot of data, but that's not necessarily the end goal. Collection of data doesn't really get you anywhere. What you have to then do is take that data that you're collecting and turn it into action. And so what we see here is an opportunity to make that data collection piece as easy as possible. And then what might be missing today for a lot of different scenarios in education is turning that data into action, into things that actually end up benefiting not only the educators, but also our students.
So if a teacher was going to, from a teacher's perspective, what will their experience be like in this realm?
Yeah. So we have Netflix user experience designers. So once again, big focus on making it as simple as possible. But what we've done up to this point is we've made the platform so that it's configurable, so that it adjusts to your school and to your settings. And so what that basically means is that we've designed the form in a way where you get a lot of dropdowns. You just kind of pick and choose what you need to put in, and then you hit save, it saves, and you're out of there. So you go in, boom, save, get back to focusing on our students. You don't have to worry about organization. You don't have to worry about any, like whether or not it's going to be there tomorrow. If the nice thing about the dropdowns is that you don't have to spend a lot of time typing out what the antecedent, we follow the ABC framework right now. So what the antecedent is, the behavior, the consequence. You just pick and choose what's relevant, get out of there. And then once you start focusing on strategizing the interventions for students, that's where our AI component can come in and say, you can just ask it like, what interventions do you recommend for the student? And then based off of the MTSS frameworks that it has been trained on, it could just give you some ideas for intervention strategies for that student and how to move things forward. As we continue to build out IntelliTier, we want to get more and more of a whole child view. And so we want to bring in assessment information about the environment, really try to understand what the motivation is for certain behaviors to continue to be able to provide the most effective strategies.
I tell you, I think that a lot of teachers will be really excited to hear about the availability of this, because the more teachers I talk to, the more, for some reason, post-COVID, student behavior issues are probably one of the biggest challenges that teachers are facing. So this kind of allows you to customize per student, right?
Exactly. It's a per student view and per student recommendations. It's not just like some wide umbrella of recommendations. It actually looks at the student data to figure out hopefully what's the most effective way to go forward. And I do see this. I've recently also started watching Abbott Elementary, where I think they talk about it as well. But there are a lot of memes on the internet. I've heard it from the people in education that I speak to. Like, things have changed since COVID. And I find that quite interesting. And so I'm excited to learn more and more about what sort of impact our product can have. But I think more than anything, what I want to put out there is the way that we're trying to approach this is that it's a partnership with you and all the educators out there. Like, you tell us, give us feedback, what works, what doesn't. Are we doing a great job? Are we doing a horrible job? I'm more than happy to hear like people screaming at me and say like, this is giving the worst recommendations in the world. It's just theoretical. It doesn't actually work in practice. Like, oh, great. Okay, good to know. Let us like dig into it, try to figure out what's going on and adjust to ultimately get to hopefully the strategies that do work in practice.
See, I love that. I think that we have lost our ability to iterate to some extent in education. Everybody's so busy trying to implement all of these different standards and everything else that we don't have time to sit there and go, okay, well, that didn't work quite the way I wanted it to. What can we do to make it better? And creating those opportunities for students is actually really powerful too. So does the platform actually have a student-facing interface, or is it mostly, is that something that might happen in the future sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we could definitely talk about, but right now we're focused on the educator side. I think a lot of focus recently with AI has been on the student side, right? Like personalized
Hmm.
student lessons, personalized tutoring, and so forth. But what I'm not really seeing is a lot of focus on the educator side. What can we do to make our teachers' lives easier, our administrator lives easier? And so that's what we're focusing on initially.
And I'm so glad that you are, because really you are hitting some major pain points that I hear on a pretty regular basis as well. I was kind of intrigued that you were talking a little bit as we were setting this interview up about that kind of balancing of technology integration with soft skills development. What are your thoughts and dreams around that one?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think what I really focus on is objectivity. So looking at what the data says and looking at cause and effects from that data. So, and that may or may not like fully apply to the soft skills side of the world, but ultimately what I believe is that we can record the data to say, yes, this does work, or no, this doesn't work. And then we can adjust from there, right? And so like how we go about in terms of strategies for teaching kids soft skills, there are different strategies out there. Now the question is which strategies work? And that's where I think that the data-driven analysis component can really help. It's not so much about us saying, this is a new strategy that works to teach kids soft skills. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is trying to figure out, okay, cool. What are all the different strategies that are out there to help kids with soft skills? And then us trying to figure out what's most effective. And to be honest, it might be a mixture of them. In certain scenarios, it might be this strategy over here. In different scenarios, it might be this other strategy. And so that's where the personalizing intervention strategies based off of that student's data comes into play to really figure out which one of those are most effective.
That makes so much sense. And I love the ability for AI to be able to help to kind of be a thought partner.
Yeah.
I mean that I know I personally use it a lot for brainstorming and making sure that I've incorporated all of the different things that a client wants in a particular piece, that sort of a thing. So, tell me a little bit. What would you say to educators that are flat out afraid of AI? Their instinct is to just ban it from the classroom. What would your advice to them be?
I think we honestly have to embrace it. Like the future is here. The parallels that I've been drawing for the evolution of AI and technology is similar to two huge movements that we've seen historically. And you can see the impact that it's had. The first one is the internet. And so you ended up having the dot-com boom. And in the late 90s, you had so many companies just building a website. And just the fact that they built a website didn't have to be a useful website, but just building one made their evaluations go out of control. And so that's what ended up creating the crash in 2000, because at the end of the day, you ended up realizing that a lot of companies don't have substance behind it. They just created this little thing. And I think that you're seeing a lot of that with AI today. They'll just put on a chatbot on top of something and say like, cool, we're an AI company. Like, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. And then the second movement is smartphones. By creating smartphones or the iPhone and bringing apps onto the phone, you just made so much more software, so much more easily accessible and powerful. And so now you can be on Facebook or different websites, all these social networks, games, and so forth on your phone at any given point in time. And so it really moved things forward. And I think that AI is along the lines of those two things. Really what AI is doing, it's democratizing knowledge. You have these models that know a lot about a lot of different subjects. Do they make mistakes? 100%. They make mistakes, but so do humans, right? Anybody you learn from, they also make mistakes. But that democratizing of knowledge is so powerful. It really makes things so much easier to consume. And not only that, being able to learn different subjects can be personalized to you personally and ultimately make it more effective for you to be able to understand things. And so I would say, don't be scared of AI. It really pushes things forward. The other parallel that I draw is like kind of to a calculator. Calculators made it so much easier for people to do math, right? You just hit in a few buttons and you can all of a sudden multiply 6-digit numbers against 6-digit numbers right in the palm of your hands. But ultimately the question of like, how do we teach kids to know the fundamentals about math when you have a calculator, when they can just put that in? That was a challenge. back in the day when calculators really started becoming available. And so I would say that's a tool that you should really think about. Like, how do we approach calculators and how do we approach it with AI? AI makes it so much easier to write essays, but kids still need to understand the fundamentals. One of the strategies that I've heard over the last couple of months that I found really interesting was suggesting maybe tell your kids to go home, write an essay using AI, and then come back into the classroom the next day and then break it down with them in the classroom, right? Like really go through it line by line. What would you have changed? What do you like? What don't you like? And then you still start to dive into the fundamentals of writing an essay. But at the end of the day, you're leveraging new tools that are there to help everybody kind of move things forward and move a little bit more faster.
I think that is great. And I agree with you. I think that the opportunity that it presents, if you just shift your perspective just a little bit, is really pretty amazing. You obviously are already looking at a solution for an immediate pain point for educators. They have a lot of others that AI might be able to solve as well. I was amazed at ChatGPT's ability to create lesson plans and rubrics and all these different types of things in seconds that used to take them hours. But so many educators don't even realize that that is available to them yet.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah,
Like,
please do.
What do you think is the base of the fear? What are people most scared of in AI?
I think that it is probably very based in the fact that the students are going to know it a whole lot better than the teachers are from the get-go. And that kind of leads me to that piece of education where we've got to get away from teachers being the sage on the stage that knows everything to a facilitator and a coach of learning. You know, that there are things that you can learn from your students. And that's a real paradigm shift for a lot of educators. And I think it's the ones that feel like they need to be an expert in everything. And we've gotten to the place where nobody can be an expert in everything anymore. It's the pace of change is just, going almost out of control. We need to move from that old system to kind of how you process information as opposed to the details of that information, because that information might be obsolete next year, And I think that that's a lot of it. And I also think that in this day and age, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how teachers and students can kind of sort through the hype and really what do you need to look for if on a model that might be trustworthy to use?
Yeah. So the way that I think about AI, I'll give you like a little bit of maybe a philosophy shift. I think the way that you should think about it, and teachers could maybe associate with this a bit, is like somebody that just came out, just got their master's and is now TAing in your classroom, right? They're so knowledgeable about so many things that maybe you didn't learn while you were in education yourself. What they don't have is the experience of all the years that you've been in your position. But they are knowledgeable and they are eager and they are willing to share all of that information with you. It's just about trying to get that information out of them in a way that's actually useful and effective. And that really can only be done by somebody that has the experience. And so honestly, if you try ChatGPT or any of these AI models or our assistant, treat it like it's a TA fresh out of school. Ask it the questions the way that you would ask a TA. And I think you'd be really surprised in how they come out that way. But the second part about like them being a TA is that sometimes they do provide information that you, based off of experience, know isn't necessarily true or like what works in practice. And that's really where your expertise or that experience comes into play. So you can't just hand everything over to AI. That's not where we're at today because they haven't lived through what you lived through. But what they can do is help you. And then in combination with your experience, you can be the most effective version of yourself in whatever you're trying to do.
Boy, that is probably the most compelling description and recommendation that I have heard so far. I love that. And, I think that also I would add to it that teachers need to be cultivating lifelong learners, and therefore they need to be lifelong learners themselves. And the idea of kind of reverse mentoring should really come into your perspective, that you have lots of experience and amazing things that you can teach these new folks, but they have brand new things that maybe you haven't had a chance to read up on and learn about, that it can be an exchange as opposed to, just I'm a mentor and I can tell you what needs to be done sort of thing. I think that we are changing so fast that it's got to be that way. We've all got to keep up and learn new things and kind of learn how to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah, exactly. And I would never tell anybody to just take what an AI response says as 100% fact. Don't do it. At the end of the day, honestly, 99+% of the time, it is going to be correct. But that 1% of the time, you still have to be on top of it. You have to really make sure that the information that it's providing you is correct. And so always look at any response that it gives you critically. A lot of times it's a lot more about just brainstorming with you, really giving you creative ideas about different ways that you can approach something that you're trying to solve yourself.
My husband actually hates writing, but he is also doing lots of really innovative things in veterinary medicine. So I've been trying to turn him on to ChatGPT and these types of tools, because he just doesn't like the actual physical sitting down and writing it. He wants to talk to somebody and just have them do it. But it was funny. He went to try to do some things last week, and AI created a reference that didn't exist. It was a theoretical reference of something that, could support his position on something. He kind of said include references, and it made one up. So I don't think that we humans are in danger of losing our jobs anytime soon, because it does take that critical look at it and making sure to look at what the references are, folks out there, or anything that it says. But you can spend your time really making it awesome, because AI does the first draft for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And first drafts are never great.
How many times did you have writer block and couldn't just start writing the thing that you're trying to put out there? You can just ask it to write something, and at the very least, you have a first version of it, and then you see what you like or what you don't like. I have two interesting, hot off the press kind of tips for that situation. You can actually say, tell it, don't make anything up. Only provide me with real facts as a part of your prompt. And the amount of hallucination that the AI model does drops significantly.
Awesome.
And it's crazy, but just something so simple, don't make it up. Tell me just hard facts. If you don't know, just say you don't know. It's fine. Just kind of giving it
give it permission.
That confidence to be able to say I don't know it does wonders. The second part is ChatGPT last week just announced that they are going into the search world. And so what this basically means is that when you in the future ask ChatGPT for something and you ask it to provide references the way that your husband did, it'll be able to go out, do search the internet, find actual references, and then on its responses for each of the citations, it'll be able to link exactly what that citation is to provide more confidence that the information that it is providing to you is real information. And so that's a new version that I think that it's in beta right now, so not fully available, but I'm guessing within a month or so, everybody's going to have access to that version of ChatGPT. And the technology for this AI movement, it's moving so quick. We understand what the problems are, but anytime you release something new, there are going to be issues. There's going to be things that aren't necessarily perfect, but as long as you keep iterating and improving and continue to push things forward, what we have in 3 years compared to what we have now, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be ridiculous.
Well, and it's already improved so much from the very first time that I tried it to now. It just seems like it's constantly getting better and better and better. And that's just really exciting. A lot of people I talk to don't really understand the idea of prompt creation. Can you talk a little bit about what you think that the models are looking for from to get the best types of results?
Yeah, I think some of the difficulty that I may not have faced initially when using ChatGPT versus the general public is that I see a lot of it the way that I see software programming, which is, and if just to give a quick little background for computer programming. When you're programming something, you have to tell it exactly what to do, like line by line by line by line. I actually remember in my ninth grade English class, my teacher had an assignment where she said, write me like exact directions of how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Right. And so you would say, like, grab the peanut butter, put a knife in, take the peanut butter out, put it on the bread. But just with those steps there, right there, you didn't say, like, where do I grab the peanut butter from? Right. So there might not be anything on the table and you say, grab the peanut butter. And then your teacher tries to grab the peanut butter. There's nothing to grab. Boom, you failed. And so in computer programming, you have to be so exact to say, like, wake up and get out of bed, put on like your clothes, go to the kitchen or the pantry, open up the cabinet, grab the peanut butter out of the bottom shelf of the cabinet, walk over to your table, open up the peanut butter, go to your knife drawer, grab a knife, go back to the table, stick the knife in. And so you basically have to be like super detailed in terms of what you actually want. That's how I think about prompt engineering, or like the prompts that are created for AI. Don't just assume that the model knows what you want. Like, be very, very exact about what you're asking from it. So even something as simple as like, don't lie to me, or like, don't make anything up, right? That's something that we all take for granted. When we're having a conversation, we just assume that the other person is not going to lie to us. But a model itself, it doesn't know that. It doesn't know that that's not one of the rules that you're like hoping that it doesn't do. So if you tell it exactly that, provide as many details as possible. Like, this is the background, this is who I am, this is the voice that I usually write my emails in, this is the subject that we're talking about, this is who I'm reaching out to, this is their background, right? Like, more and more and more information. The more information that you provide it, the more it understands what you're actually trying to achieve. Anything that you don't give it information about, it just assumes and makes like best case assumption for what it thinks you might want. And then that's where the disconnect ends up coming in between the responses that you're getting that you may not be happy with and one that it can absolutely be capable of that you would be happy with.
You know, my favorite trick as I have been on my own learning journey is to, you write the whole prompt and you think you've got it. And then it's like, well, no, what they're giving me doesn't include this piece. Well, I never included that piece. So rewrite to include XYZ.
Exactly.
I use it all the time, and it does. It makes it better and better and better each time. And it allows it to iterate in seconds, where, you may have to completely rewrite something or not use it at all. And I just find it a fairly magical experience.
And that's the second part of it, right? Like, whatever you end up getting the first time, it's going to be a first draft every time. And so what do you do with your first drafts? You read through them, you look at them, you analyze them. What do you like? What don't you like? And then you change things. And so you just continue to tell it how you wanted to change things to ultimately get to like what you're hoping to arrive at.
Excellent. Well, tell me, as getting kind of back to you and your initiative and everything. Obviously, you had a really good thought partner in the vice principal, your cousin, vice principal,
acting principal this year, I believe.
Oh, hey, congratulations to her. But education can be a little bit of a morass to navigate as far as getting it out to everybody and whatnot. What have the biggest challenges been to you in starting this new company and getting it out into the world the way you'd like it?
Yeah, I think one of our biggest challenge so far has been not taking things for granted. Or taking things for granted. Along similar lines, where I come from a technology background, and so I look at what we built and like, yeah, super intuitive, you can do this, that, and that. Sometimes people look at it and it has like for example, our initial version had a blank page on our assistant. It's like, I knew that you can ask it more information about MTSS frameworks, or you can ask it to brainstorm with you about different tier 2 intervention strategies that you could put into your school. Very powerful thing, very useful. But when most people look at an assistant like this, they don't know where to go, right? It's like, okay, that's nice to have. And so we saw that, and we started building in some prompt suggestions into the system. And so now when you look at it, you're going to see different conversation starters for what you can potentially do, and then start diving into that. And then as you're having the conversation, we're also going to include some suggestions of how you can move the conversation forward, or how you can pivot into like a different type of conversation to, once again, keep those creative juices flowing to try to maximize the value that you can get out of the assistant. Just kind of along those lines, it's continuing to hear the feedback that we're getting from our initial customers, looking at what they're doing, and then figuring out how can we make this simpler and simpler and simpler to use to be able to get the value out of it. Because what our hope is that if we make it extremely simple and extremely effective through data-driven concepts, then you can provide really effective personalized student support for your students in a really quick timeline. That should take some of the load off of our educators and allow them to focus on our students, which at the end of the day is what everybody wants, right? We all want you to be focusing on the students and helping them learn and move them forward. And so in any way that we can make things easier, we will continue to push to do that.
So tell me your thoughts about student privacy. You mentioned that real quickly, but I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, there are a lot of companies out there that are just kind of throwing in a ChatGPT integration with like a chat on top of whatever they already had and then calling themselves an AI company. We're not seeing it that way. In order for us to truly combine the technology with the education side of the world, the AI has to be deeply integrated into our platform. And in order to deeply integrate this super sensitive data into our platform, we need to make sure that we're taking care of this data. So we've built a FERPA compliant platform that is hosted on Microsoft Azure servers, all within the United States, to make sure that doesn't go anywhere. We actually do not use ChatGPT. We don't use, or at least OpenAI API servers. We have a model that we host within our Microsoft Azure servers that then our backend servers, and maybe it's a little technical, end up talking to. But that data is never used to train a model. It never goes outside of our servers. We don't build anything with third-party vendors. Everything is built in-house. And so putting all of that together really allows us to make sure that we're taking care of the data, because this is super, super important data to make sure that we handle with care.
Sounds like a really good thing for decision makers to be asking about as they move forward, because that is a seriously important piece of the puzzle.
100%. I read a recent sort of leakage that ended up happening with an AI that was basically making it into servers outside of the United States. And that was a big no-no, right? In terms of like this super sensitive data. So yes, anybody that is providing you with like an AI type of solution, ask them, how do you power this? Like where does the data live? Who do you call in order to get the responses from this? If they don't have AI experts within the company. So my co-founder has a PhD in machine learning. Like it was a very big priority for me as we were getting the company off the ground to make sure that we had somebody with that expertise come in. But if they don't have AI experts within the company, then a lot of times they use third-party vendors for that. And once they start using a third-party vendor like OpenAI to power their ChatGPT experiences or their AI experiences, it becomes a bit of a concern in terms of what's happening with that data. And also a big reason for why you shouldn't be asking ChatGPT for intervention strategies. Can it do it? Absolutely. But in order to do it effectively, once again, you have to give it all the information in the world. And once you start doing that, you're kind of offloading some very sensitive data into a service that you may not be able to trust.
Good point. Thank you so much. That is fabulous. And again, that iteration, I love it. I love it. And it's hard because you see that on software development a lot, is that what the developers think is intuitive is not necessarily what the end user finds as intuitive. So it's great that you have a foundation of regular feedback like that.
Yeah, luckily that's something that I've always had a bit of an advantage against my coworkers in the computer science industry, because my parents weren't technical. I had to bus to my middle and high school for 20 miles in the middle of LA traffic every day. Like I experienced, I guess, what most people experience day to day kind of growing up. And my technical skills came in more like late high school and definitely in college and of course my career. And so that combination of both of those experiences has turned out to be quite an advantage, because I understand what non-technical people go through day to day, but I also understand how to potentially solve some of those problems on the technical side of the world. And so that's always been an advantage. And now I'm hoping that it's an advantage that our company has, period, versus other ed tech competitors.
Well, building that bridge is what it's all about. And sometimes, even the languages are completely different. Being able to figure out what, all those acronyms that you threw out with PBIS and supports and all this other kind of stuff. I'm sure that your computer folks knew nothing about that when they first started. So it's making sure that you even define terms similarly or can understand what you're saying versus what they're saying. It can be a real challenge, but it sounds like you've got a super effective, feedback pattern to be able to continue to do that, which is amazing. And I know that educators will definitely respect that, because so often the software systems that they're presented with are, you have to figure out how to use it, as opposed to how can we make it better to be able to better suit you.
Exactly.
So
That's crazy to me.
I think that's a little magical. I know it is, but it happens. It happens. I'm sure you've heard of lots of examples of it. But boy, this has been a fabulous conversation. And I thank you so much for looking for how you can be a solutionary for the education space, because it is sorely needed. The teachers out there are so overburdened with so many things, and this sounds like a really amazing tool to make it just a little easier for them.
Thank you. Yeah, and if anybody is interested to really work with us, especially initially while we continue to build early on, we're extremely excited to talk to anybody and everybody that wants to. So please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's one of the best places to contact me. So Jose Moreno, and then our company name is Neulight, Neulight. You can also go to our website, which is neulight.io. And we have a contact us form there that you can send out a message, and I'm looking at every single one of those as well. And then finally, we do have a free version of our product available on our website. It has almost everything that we talked about today. What it doesn't have is the ability to have multiple people signed into the same school. So basically, one person can put in all the data for a specific student, speak with the assistant, get personalized intervention recommendations. But the counselor or other teachers that student also sees won't be able to see that same data. That's where we move over to our paid version.
Boy, that's really exciting. I'll make sure to drop all those links in the show notes as well for listeners, so you can get directly there. But I love that you are willing to share and let people try it out and see what it can do first. That's really amazing.
We believe in our product and we believe in what we're doing. And if we continue to execute well, then I only see us being successful from here.
Well, I can definitely agree with you. And I'm going to leave you with a final question, because this integration of technology is still a little new to our old systems of education. So when you're thinking about applying technologies in different areas like this, especially the ones like yours that actually solve problems that are existing, what would you like decision makers to know?
One, we're here to work with you, as opposed to just giving you some product and saying, take it or leave it. 2, your feedback is extremely important to us. And then 3, I'd really love to learn what other problems you have, not necessarily for, let's say, the next year, but IntelliTier is our flagship product that we're introducing as kind of like an introduction of what Neulight is capable of. Like, hey, this is new ed tech. This is a bit different from anything that you've dealt with. And if you don't believe so, please tell me, but it should be different from anything else that you've dealt with. What's your next problem that we can help solve? And really, IntelliTier will really show off what we're capable of. And then once we start introducing that next product, hopefully the conversations are a little bit easier to provide people with confidence for what you're going to get out of our company.
Well, that is a fantastic invitation and perspective for decision makers. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us and our listeners here at Education Perspectives.
Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Education Perspectives. Feel free to share your thoughts on our Facebook page. Let us know which education perspectives you would like to hear or share. Please subscribe and share with your friends.